Dr. Sharonda Robinson, welcome to North Carolina Now.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are an epidemiologist, and a lot of our attention recently has been focused on the Ebola virus and the toll that it has taken throughout the world. Here in the U.S., we have had our first death from Ebola. As you study diseases like this as an epidemiologist, help us put into perspective the real concern that we should have here in the United States about this disease.
Well, we should be concerned here because it is an infectious disease, which means that it does spread. However, we should not be alarmed. We should just be aware of the signs and symptoms and the necessary protocols that we should take. We also need to know that Ebola is a blood-borne disease, and so it's spread through direct contact with bodily fluids and not through casual contact.
So very small chances that folks here in the U.S. would contract the disease.
That is true. If they have not come into direct contact with someone who is infected, then there's a small chance that they will contract the disease.
If even with those very small chances someone were to become in contact with the virus, is recovery realistic at this point?
Recovery is realistic and a possibility because if you act promptly when you first see the signs and symptoms, and it's also based on the individual's immune system. So with proper immunity, so if you don't have another disease that compromises your immune system, and if you act immediately, it is possible to recover, as you see from the physician and the missionary who have recovered.
What are some of the signs and symptoms if someone does come into contact with Ebola?
The first sign or symptom is a fever, and other symptoms are vomiting, diarrhea, stomach problems, muscle aches and pains, and general feeling of malaise or fatigue or weakness.
And those symptoms take how long usually to manifest?
The incubation period ranges anywhere from 2 to 21 days. So if a person who has come in contact with an infected person actually has contracted the disease, the symptoms will be apparent within 21 days.
What kind of precautions are currently being taken across the United States?
Well, the precautions that are being taken here are, one, as you know, in some of the major airports, people that are coming in from international travel, their temperatures are being taken and they're going through extensive screenings to determine whether or not they have come into contact with an infected person. And then the medical personnel, they are practicing the appropriate procedures for dealing with infectious diseases. And also we're making everyone aware of the signs and symptoms and how they should respond if they should come into contact with an infectious individual.
How should folks go about separating out the myths of a disease like Ebola from the facts?
Well, again, awareness is key. So to realize that it's not spread through casual contact, that you must come into direct contact with bodily fluids, and that fluids must enter your circulatory system. So to know that just by being in a room with someone who's infected doesn't make you in any more danger of contacting the disease. So heightened awareness, knowing that it's not spread through casual contact.
What are some of the other misconceptions that people have about this particular disease?
Some of the other misconceptions at one time was that it could possibly be used as the next terrorist weapon or weapon of mass destruction, and that's not possible because it is not airborne, and so you can't just extract the disease from someone and create a bomb of something or that nature. So Ebola, again, is spread through direct bodily contact.
As an epidemiologist, as you watch all of this unfold and watch the same news reports that the rest of us do, what are you looking for and what are you watching for?
I'm watching for the ways that people do respond. Again, like I say, awareness and calmness. When people panic, they tend to overreact and to react irrationally. We can't discriminate against people who may have been exposed because they are people too. You know, so again, realizing that everybody who has come into contact is not infectious. So do look for those signs and symptoms, and realize that in the U.S. we are taking the necessary steps to be precautious and to prevent the spread of the disease here.
And how effective do you think the screenings that we're now seeing happening at airports are going to be?
Well, as long as people are honest in reporting their exposures, these screenings can be very effective. So screening is a good first step to the precautions that need to be taken. Taking people's temperature, again, the fever is one of the first signs and symptoms, and making people aware that they should monitor themselves for development of these signs and symptoms within 21 days after having come into contact.
Where can we go if we want to get reliable, accurate information about Ebola and what's going on? What are some of those sources that we can use to get that information?
The best places to go to get reliable information will be the World Health Organization, CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the National Institutes of Health. Those are the most reliable resources.
Now, you are a faculty member at North Carolina Central University and an epidemiologist. Does this present a teaching moment for you with your students?
It does indeed. The students are able to see what I talk about or teach about as it actually happened. A lot of students, when they come to my class, they are not aware of what epidemiology is. And so this is a great opportunity to tell them, as an epidemiologist, we study the distribution and determinants of diseases and other health outcomes. And as you see, this is a disease that is current right now. And so we're investigating to identify the sources, to identify any possible treatments, and to identify the methods for preventing the spread of the disease.
Dr. Robinson, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come talk with us.
Thank you again for having me.